The story of MRI originates with Dr. Raymond V. Damadian, whose fundamental scientific discovery in 1971 made MRI possible and has remained to this day the basis for every MRI picture or image ever made. He obtained the first patent in MRI, built the first MRI machine which made the first MRI image, formed the first MRI company, battled with and prevailed against giants of the medical devices industry, and led the company in producing several generations of cutting-edge MRI scanners. Vahan Damadian, Dr. Damadian's father, was born in Turkey. At the age of 12, Vahan, together with his mother and sister, miraculously escaped the 1915 Armenian genocide. They remained in Syria for the remainder of World War I and moved to America in 1920. In 1932, Vahan married Odette Yazedjian, the daughter of a French mother and Armenian father. They settled in Elmhurst, Queens, New York, and had 2 children, Raymond in 1936 and Claudette in 1937. The family moved to Forest Hills, Queens, New York in 1938. Pictured here is Raymond, second from the left, with his parents and younger sister Claudette at his graduation from Public School 101 in 1949. Raymond, an excellent student, excelled in tennis and music as well. From the age of 8 until he left for college, Raymond traveled into Manhattan to attend the Juilliard School of Music and became an accomplished violinist. Jeanne Panot Yazedjian, Raymond's French maternal grandmother, was a powerful influence in his life. Sadly, she died a slow death by cancer when Raymond was just 10 years old. Years later, as a medical student, Raymond vowed to find a way to overcome this dreadful disease. While a 15-year-old student at Forest Hills High School, Raymond competed with roughly 10,000 students for advanced placement scholarships offered by the Ford Foundation. As one of the 200 winners, Raymond was offered a full scholarship to the University of Wisconsin. Even though he was an outstanding Juilliard-trained violinist and had been playing championship tennis at the Junior Davis Cup level, he decided that his chances of succeeding in a career as a concert violinist or a professional tennis player were slim. He accepted the scholarship and was off to Madison, Wisconsin. Raymond received his B.S. in mathematics from the University of Wisconsin in 1956, and then entered Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx, New York, in pursuit of his M.D. degree. It was during his time at Einstein that Raymond decided that he would prefer to work in a research lab rather than as a clinician in a doctor's office. In the summers, while in medical school, Raymond worked as a tennis pro at the Dune Deck Hotel in West Hampton. It was during that time that he met the love of his life, Donna Terry, a local girl studying to be a nurse at Houghton College in Houghton, New York. They were married on June 4, 1960, less than a week after Raymond graduated with his medical degree. As a newly minted MD, Dr. Damadian fulfilled his intern and residency requirements at Kings County Hospital Center in Brooklyn, New York, an affiliate of the State University of New York Downstate College of Medicine. During his tenure there as an assistant resident in internal medicine, he became extremely interested in the process by which the delicate balance of fluids and electrolytes is maintained in the human body, putting him on a path of research that would eventually lead to his fundamental discovery, making an MRI machine possible. That path included a fellowship in nephrology at the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri, a fellowship in biophysics at Harvard University, and a stint at the U.S. Air Force School of Aerospace Medicine in the physiological chemistry section. Raymond and Donna started their family in 1964 with the birth of Timothy, followed by Jevin in 1966 and Kira in 1973. While a medical student, Dr. Damadian was automatically deferred from the draft, but in 1965 he received orders from the U.S. Air Force to report for duty and was sent to the USAF School of Aerospace Medicine in San Antonio, Texas, to serve as a research scientist on topics important to the military. Fortunately, newly minted Captain Damadian was allowed to continue his own research in parallel with conducting experiments on a liquid rocket propellant that was needed by the Air Force. By 1967, Captain Damadian had fulfilled his military obligation and returned to Downstate Medical Center, this time as an associate professor of medicine and biophysics. The concept of the MRI machine was born in 1969. It was at Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, New York, that Professor Damadian began the long and challenging journey ultimately leading to the invention of the MRI scanner. While working on a research project, he was introduced to a physical phenomenon known as NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance. NMR spectrometers, used by chemists for years, could detect radio signals from the contents of a test tube placed in a magnetic field and analyze the signals to determine the content's molecular identity and structure. Downstate Medical Center didn't have its own NMR spectrometer, but Professor Damadian had access to one at the chemistry department at Brooklyn College. Although it wasn't immediately helpful to him, he wholeheartedly embraced NMR technology and soon conceived the idea of using it on a much larger scale. He envisioned a machine that could non-invasively and harmlessly, unlike X-rays, look inside the human body, not just inside a test tube. On September 17, 1969, he writes to the Health Research Council of the City of New York requesting funds to pursue a nuclear magnetic resonance body scanner to detect malignant tumors. The idea of an MRI scanner was born. Using NMR equipment, Professor Damadian soon discovers that radio frequency, or RF signals, from normal tissue and cancerous tissue are different, providing a key to hunting down cancer deposits in the body. Shown here are two NMR signals. At the top is the NMR signal from normal tissue. The signal at the bottom is from cancerous tissue. Notice that it takes longer for the signal from the cancerous tissue to decay compared to the signal from normal or non-cancerous tissue. This was a monumental discovery. Professor Damadian's discovery was reported in the March 29, 1971 issue of Science, the academic journal of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, entitled Tumor Detection by Nuclear Magnetic Resonance. It was the first MRI paper ever published. This paper was referenced by other scientist authors in the field so frequently that it was recognized as a citation classic by the Institute for Scientific Information in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, whose mission it is to monitor scientific citations. In the spring of 1971, the Downstate Reporter published Professor Damadian's discovery, his intention to build a human-sized scanner, and his voxel by voxel scanning method, which was the first MRI method ever proposed. The next step was to secure a patent. Filed on March 17, 1972, and granted nearly 2 years later, on February 5, 1974, Professor Damadian's apparatus and method for detecting cancer in tissue was patented for the use of NMR in medical scanning. It was numbered 3789832, often referred to as just 832. In granting Professor Damadian's patent, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office had to create a new category of patents, a new shoe, which it named magnetic resonance imaging, or spectroscopy. Dr. Damadian's 832 patent is the first in the shoe. Today, there are over 4,500 patents in that shoe. Days later, on February 9, 1974, the New York Times reports on the first ever MRI patent. Professor Damadian's next major achievement was the NMR scanning of the tumor in the interior chest wall of a live mouse named Pioneer Mouse 2. The scan took 4 hours to complete. The result was published in the December 24, 1977 issue of Science. The computer-generated image looked like a hazy Christmas tree ball, which pleased the editor of Science because he was looking for something appropriate for Christmas for the cover of the December issue. The method for acquiring the NMR data was named the FONAR method, an alternating acronym for Field Focused Nuclear Magnetic Resonance. The name FONAR would be used again, not too far in the future. The time had come to build a human-sized NMR machine. Professor Damadian and his team, undaunted by the enormity of this project, were determined to see it through. Professor Damadian would naturally have expected and welcomed the interest and support of the scientific community. Instead, his conception of an NMR machine to scan the human body was met with resistance and even ridicule. One prominent scientist dismissed it as visionary nonsense. The project of building the first whole-body NMR machine, later known as the MRI, was underway early in February of 1976. A key component of any NMR device is its magnet. But the one Professor Damadian had in mind had to be big enough to accommodate a human being. Professor Damadian decided to build a large superconducting magnet from scratch. Neither he nor his postgraduate students, Lawrence Minkoff and Michael Goldsmith, had any experience with superconducting technology, but they were bright, hard-working researchers devoted to transforming an idea, one that could potentially revolutionize the practice of medicine, into reality. What they didn't know how to do, they learned. When something didn't work, they tried something else. Long working days, manual labor, frustrating events, conflicts, and setbacks were part and parcel of this daunting project. It took them 1.5 years to build. They named it Indomitable. The magnet was basically a very large hoop of 30 miles of tightly wound niobium titanium wire, which was miraculously obtained at a price of 10 cents on the dollar. When electric current passes through the wire hoop, it produces the desired magnetic field. The team wound the wire for weeks, 6 days a week, 16 hours a day. The magnet was contained in a dewar, comprised of 3 very large metal hollow donuts. The magnet was placed inside the smallest donut, which in turn was placed inside the larger second donut, which in turn was placed inside the even larger third donut. The wire hoop in the first donut was immersed in liquid helium to keep it supercooled, that is, below minus 269 degrees Celsius, near absolute zero, so it would be able to conduct the hefty electric currents needed to generate a sufficiently strong magnetic field. A large storage tank sat atop the door to supply liquid helium as needed inside the first donut. In order to gain access to it, Professor Damadian jackhammered a hole in the ceiling directly above it, so the tank could be filled from the floor above. He didn't seek permission in advance to do that. Characteristically, he just did it. The second donut was filled with liquid nitrogen to help cool the liquid helium. The largest donut, an aluminum can with half-inch thick walls, functioned like a thermos bottle by vacuum isolating the two donuts inside it from the heat of the laboratory. Of the 3 donuts, this is the only one that is visible. Professor Damadian volunteered to make the first attempt at a whole-body scan. Nobody knew if a strong magnetic field would produce any cardiac-related side effects, so he had a cardiologist on hand, standing at left in the photo, just in case something went wrong. The cardboard vest around Professor Damadian housed the antenna that was to collect the hoped-for signals from his body. But there were no signals. So it was decided that Professor Damadian's size was not a good match for the antenna that Michael Goldsmith had designed. A smaller guinea pig was needed. The thinner Lawrence Larry Minkoff was not eager to risk his health for an experiment that had never been done before. He was also unhappy that he would have to sit still for hours with his arms raised instead of lying down. Finally, on July 2, 1977, Larry told Professor Damadian he would do it. That very evening, shortly before midnight, he put on the vest and took his seat inside Indomitable. As soon as the machine was turned on, there was a signal. Nearly 5 hours later, after Larry had been incrementally moved via the adjustable seat into different positions, the first whole-body human scan, which showed a cross-section of Larry's chest, was complete. Shown here is the page from Michael Goldsmith's notebook, where he and Professor Damadian recorded signal measurements from Lawrence Larry Minkoff's chest. Measurements were collected at 106 points, 2 minutes and 11 seconds per point. When each of the 106 numeric values was given a corresponding color and drawn on a sheet of grid paper, the result, although rough, was an otherwise accurate picture of Larry's chest. The jubilant Professor Damadian writes in Goldsmith's notebook, July 2, 1977, fantastic success. 4:45 a.m., first human image, complete in amazing detail, showing heart, lungs, vertebra, musculature. Data collection began on July 2nd and was completed on July 3rd. The data acquired from Lawrence Larry Minkoff's chest was later fed into a computer, which interpolated it in various ways to produce the first image of a live human body. The team settled on the 5th method of interpolation and named the corresponding image Mink 5. Compared to a modern-day MRI image of the chest, Mink 5, the first ever MRI image, was remarkably accurate. Pictured here are Professor Raymond V. Damadian and his postgraduate students, Lawrence Larry Minkoff and Michael Mike Goldsmith, with their completed Indomitable. And here is Dr. Damadian years later with Indomitable at the Smithsonian Institution's Hall of Medical Science. Apparently, Dr. Damadian's pioneering spirit runs in the family. His great-uncle, Marcel Pineau Jr., worked closely with the Wright brothers, on their invention of the Wright Flyer. And a generation earlier, Marcel Pineau Sr. was a pioneer in the development of France's internal combustion engine. Encouraged by the success of Indomitable, Dr. Dumadian was eager to bring the benefits of this revolutionary technology to the world. He left academia and started his own business in 1978, soon thereafter named Phonar Corporation. The company introduced the world's first commercial MRI scanner in 1980 and became a publicly traded entity in 1981. Phonar has since installed over 400 MRI scanners the world over. But Dr. Dumadian's path to eventual success as an MRI manufacturer had many things in common with his path to discovery and the building of Indomitable: opposition, interference, discouragement, technical difficulties and challenges, financial struggles, and an extraordinary amount of hard work. The potential of NMR imaging to revolutionize diagnostic medicine was quickly recognized. By 1983, there were 13 companies committed to manufacturing MRI scanners, including the well-heeled corporate giants Johnson & Johnson, General Electric, Philips, Siemens, and Hitachi. A David versus Goliath battle ensued, fought in the marketplace and in the courts. 15 years later, on May 27, 1997, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered General Electric to pay Phonar over $128 million for patent infringement. Against all odds, Phonar prevailed. Phonar built the first ever commercial MRI in 1980 and named it the QED-80. QED is the abbreviation for the Latin phrase meaning that which was to be demonstrated. By making MRI commercially available to the entire world, Phonar demonstrated that the dream Dr. Dumadian had 20 years earlier, that of building a machine to scan humans using nuclear magnetic resonance for the benefit of all mankind, was not visionary nonsense after all. Every MRI uses a powerful magnet. The QED-80s was a permanent magnet, which is the type of magnet often used to attach things to a refrigerator. Only the QED-80's magnet was a lot more powerful. A computer-driven patient transport system automated the manual stepwise scanning procedure that was first used by Indomitable. The QED-80 was soon upgraded to the identical-looking QED-80 Alpha. Since then, Phonar has launched an increasingly innovative line of MRI scanners. In 1983, the Beta 3000, which also featured a permanent magnet, but a more powerful one than that of the QED-80. The number 3000 indicated the strength of the magnet, which is often measured in Gauss. So, the Beta 3000 was a 3000 Gauss permanent magnet MRI. To give you a sense of its strength of 3000 Gauss, the strength of the Earth's magnetic field is half a Gauss. In 1984, the Beta 3000M also featured a 3000 Gauss magnet, but its magnet was an electromagnet, not a permanent magnet, meaning it used electricity to create the magnetic field. The Beta 3000M was much smaller and lighter than the Beta 3000. The M stood for mobile, indicating that it could be installed in an 18-wheeler so it could be regularly transported to serve multiple medical facilities. In 1996, the Quad 12000, much more powerful than its predecessor, its name aptly included quad because it was open on all four sides, making it the first open MRI. In 2001, the Phonar 360, a 6,000 Gauss electromagnet MRI allowing 360-degree access to the patient. It was configurable for MRI-guided surgical procedures as the OR 360, or landscape decorated as the Open Sky MRI. In 2001, the Phonar Upright Multi-Position MRI, also known as the Stand-Up MRI. This MRI features a unique magnet configuration. The opposing magnetic poles are oriented vertically with a generous amount of space in between, making it the most patient-friendly MRI, a feature especially appealing to claustrophobic and large patients. No tunnel, no tube. Most patients are scanned seated, watching TV. A special motorized patient bed rotates the patient from recumbent to upright, making it the only multi-position MRI scanner. Patients can be scanned sitting, standing, bending for flexion and extension, or lying down. Referring physicians can decide which position would be best for their patients. This is a very valuable feature because the stand-up MRI is the only MRI that can scan patients in their normal weight-bearing positions, which can lead to more accurate diagnoses. It's especially important for MRIs of the spine. When the patient is scanned lying down, the spine is not bearing the weight of the body, as it does when the patient is sitting or standing, which are often the positions in which patients experience pain. If a spinal scan is only performed with the patient in a lie-down, weightless position, the patient's problem could be underestimated or even missed entirely. These are the same-day images of the lumbar spine of a patient who had undergone back surgery but was continuing to experience pain. The image on the left was acquired with the patient lying down. It shows a normal alignment of the vertebrae. The image on the right was acquired with the patient sitting, showing a dramatic spinal instability. This problem would have gone undiagnosed on every lie-down-only MRI scanner. Dr. Damadian received numerous awards for his achievements. On July 15, 1988, Dr. Damadian received the nation's highest honor in technology, the National Medal of Technology, presented by President Ronald Reagan for his independent contributions in conceiving and developing the application of magnetic resonance technology to medical uses, including whole-body scanning and diagnostic imaging.
Raymond Damadian for his independent contributions in conceiving and developing the application of magnetic resonance technology to medical uses, including whole-body scanning and diagnostic imaging.
Dr. Damadian was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame on February 12, 1989, for the invention of magnetic resonance scanning, joining a select group of renowned pioneers, including Orville and Wilbur Wright, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Alexander Graham Bell. In his letter to the attendees of the 1989 induction ceremony, President George H. Bush salutes Dr. Damadian for his invention of the medical device that saves lives around the world. On April 24, 2001, the Lemelson MIT program named Dr. Damadian the winner of the 7th Annual Lemelson MIT Lifetime Achievement Award for invention and innovation, recognizing him as the pioneer of magnetic resonance scanning technology. On April 29, 2004, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Dr. Damadian received the Benjamin Franklin Medal and the Bauer Award for Business Leadership for his contribution to the origination of MR scanning. These awards are widely regarded as the American Nobel Prizes. The citation read, "In 1969, Raymond Damadian first proposed the idea of using nuclear magnetic resonance technology to scan the human body externally for early signs of malignancy. He went on to design and build the first MR scanner that produced the first human image in 1977. There were many other awards besides these, but considering that Dr. Damadian made the seminal discovery that makes MRI possible, conspicuously absent from among them is the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize for MRI was awarded to 2 nuclear magnetic resonance scientists in 2003. The Nobel Committee could have named 3 winners, but they deliberately excluded Dr. Damadian. According to Alfred Nobel's will, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine is to be awarded to those who make discoveries. Methods or techniques or inventions or improvements are specifically excluded. The 2 individuals who were awarded the prize contributed to MRI by improving magnetic resonance imaging techniques, but their contributions were not discoveries. They were basically improved methods to image the tissue signals that had already been discovered by Dr. Damadian. Unfortunately, the Nobel Committee chose to ignore Dr. Damadian's genuine discovery. But in denying Dr. Damadian his rightful place among Nobel laureates, Dr. Damadian joined an equally prestigious group of dozens of unsung heroes who deserved to win Nobel Prizes, but didn't. Among them, Nikola Tesla for AC current, hydroelectric power plant, X-rays, and the induction motor. Thomas Edison and Joseph Swan for the invention of the light bulb. Jonas Salk, the polio vaccine. Albert Sabin, the oral polio vaccine. And Charles Best, insulin. Of course, being unjustly overlooked for the Nobel Prize was initially an overwhelming disappointment for Dr. Damadian, although to a far lesser degree, the disappointment would remain with him for the rest of his life. But Dr. Damadian would not be overcome by it. The reason? His faith. In 1957, Raymond, then a 21-year-old medical student, accepted Jesus Christ at Billy Graham Crusade, held in Madison Square Garden. As his faith deepened over the ensuing years, Raymond became a devoted, outspoken Christian, and later in life, an ardent creation scientist. It was his faith that enabled him to put the disappointment of not winning the Nobel Prize in MRI, which he so clearly deserved, into proper perspective. He said this, "Ultimately, I fully understand that the greatest reward for my work is not through some public recognition, but rather through the millions of lives helped by MRI. Not being awarded the Nobel Prize doesn't diminish in the least the much greater gratitude I experience, knowing the many lives my invention has helped save, and that it has given humanity a new tool with which to successfully battle disease. And make no mistake about it, for anything good that has ever come as a result of me, all of the glory and all of the honor are His and His alone." To those who embrace the truth, Dr. Damadian is, indeed, the father of MRI.